Hello and good morning. Welcome. Nice to see everyone. Today is a very exciting day. So you will see in a little bit just how exciting it is. I won't spoil the surprise for you. We start the service this morning like we start all of our services by ringing a bell. This bell is to call us back into covenant. We are on the unceded land of the Muwekma tribe of the Ohlone people. Many years ago, they were displaced, colonized, their land taken. Now they seek to regain their land that they may have a place to pass on their heritage, their cultural, their rituals to their descendants. Everything that we do to help them do that works our way back into covenant. The second bell calls us into relationship with one another, that we may see love where we had previously known scars or hurts or harm. Everything that we do to cultivate compassion and create the beloved community works our way into covenant. And finally, the third bell is for our children and our children's children out to the seventh generation, reminding us that everything we do or everything that we fail to do will be felt by the generations following us.
Good morning. I am Drew Wilson, your worship associate for today. You know that itch that's hard to reach but still nags? Well, ever since I moved here in 1993, I've had an intense itch to see Mission Peak become a major presence in the Bay Area. We've made much progress, but for me, the itch is still there. So I am here today to ask all my friends at Mission Peak to help scratch my itch. Besides my own appreciation and encouragement for Mission Peak, that we move into our canvas with a joyful generosity, I add my own hope that our generous giving allows Mission Peak to continue its role as an important voice in the Tri-Cities. I want us to be that voice that defends the freedom of marginalized people and democracy itself. I want us to continue to resist the wave of assaults we are facing, including the City Council's criminalizing of the unhoused population. I want us to defend protections for our environment and protect immigrants and our LGBTQIA citizens from the dehumanizing treatment of xenophobic hate. And I hope we can do that with love, care, kindness, while using our privilege to rise up for those being pushed down. Let us begin with this welcome and call to worship by Unitarian Universalist Amy McKenzie Quinn. Welcome to this common, sacred space. Common because we are all welcome. Sacred because here we transform the ordinary and attend to the profound. We carry with us regrets, doubts, fears, stories, laughter, and they may inspire our worship. Above all, may we each meet what we need most to find on this day, in this common sacred space. And I want to continue with the wisdom of Mission Peak's resident poet laureate, John Porter, with his super haiku entitled Homage.
Homage. I pay homage to the one who strewed galaxies across the heavens. The universe, a roiling cauldron, seethed with a whirl of potential. Long-planted seeds grew and thrived, from star stuff to sentient beings. In a dream, Adam and Eve, innocent, tasted of the fateful fruit. They awoke and saw good and evil, felt naked, and so hid themselves. Outside the garden, danger hid down each path, and night brought fearsome dreams. But deep in their bones, they remembered oneness and yearned for it. Rightly seen, all things connect in a great golden matrix of being. Now, when I despair, then surrender, loving hands hold and comfort me. We can be those hands, holding each other with great tenderness and love. A community of cherished belonging is our dream come true. Held in memory, voices from the great beyond remind us who we are. On this blue planet, we live our days with your love, goodness, and mercy.
And we have some very special guest chalice lighters this morning. So I welcome the Ryan King family.
All right. Hello, everyone. Today we're going to be using the chalice lightings words that we use in Children's Chapel. So please join me in reciting these words, which call us together as a community and with Unitarian Universalists across the road. We are Unitarian Universalists who put love in the center of our lives. May this chalice that we light today lead us as we explore, share, and play.
And we have a board welcome from Valerie, who is somewhere around here.
Multitasking, folks, multitasking. Good morning. My name's Valerie Stewart. I'm she, her, us, whatever, ours. We are so glad you are here. Closer to the mic. Unitarian Universalism is a radically inclusive, non-doctrinal, non-dogmatic, open-minded, and open-hearted faith. We are all people who are coming at truth from different paths. We gather together across different identities, experiences, and beliefs to affirm the inherent worth of every person. Together, we see our job is to love the hate out of the world, heal the hurt in ourselves and others, and be the change we would like to see in the world. If you are our guest for the first time here or online, we welcome you. Here's a bit of information about how we conduct our hybrid services. We use chat in Zoom or the book near the welcome table for you to share your joys and concerns, personal milestones of importance that you wish to share with those here and virtually. We also have a social hour, which is going to be cut sort of shortly because we have a special lunch following the service today. The worship host will give you more information in Zoom about what's going on. Deanna at the membership table will put a link to our weekly newsletter and chat so you can see all the events coming up, and there are a whole bunch. We encourage you to join anything that speaks to you. We also put our welcome email, welcome@MPUUC.org, to request a newsletter or any other information that you want about our congregation. And if you're here in person, everything's right over there. Now, some announcements. I'm not going to say a few. Today, we hope everyone will stay after service for our lunch and learn party. Actually, we're celebrating the beginning of Canvas. We have several types of homemade soup, lovingly prepared, both vegetarian and non-vegetarian varieties. Everyone will get a chance to collaborate and carry out our mission we all hope to achieve. Monday, Monday is the 10th at 7 p.m. Zoomer members, you get to have your own party together to celebrate the launch of Canvas. This is open to all members and friends, and if you just had such a great time today and want to meet with the Zoomers on Monday night, Zoom in. Okay, from Ariel, she wants you to know that next Saturday, March 15th, is Parents' Night Out, or as the kiddos like to call it, the Kids' Night Out. Ariel and Jordan will be here to provide a special night of fun and fellowship for our young members, and the parents get to go do whatever parents do. RSVP is required, so you can find that in Week on the Peak or to directly message Ariel. And on March 22nd, the following Saturday, everyone is invited here to Cole Hall for a potluck and game night. And I understand there are some serious gamers here. It starts at 5:30. No RSVP is required. And finally, some folks have been wondering what they can do. If they can't march in the streets, how can they participate in creating voices for social justice at this time? Well, the UUA has lots of options. Support the Voting Rights Act. Deanna is going to put 2 links in Week on the Peak, so Zoomers, you can go to the website that is at UUA. This is organized by the Unitarian Universalists for Social Justice. There are a lot of activities. If you haven't already signed up to get their emails, you might want to do that because a lot of the events are virtual and you can participate and join UUs from all over the country. Side with love, which is our long-standing, whoops, thank you, audience participation is always essential. Side with Love is the long-standing Unitarian Universalist program for social action as well, and they have a new manual with lots of information about what you can do. These are going to be pinned up on our bulletin board. You can come over, take a picture with your phone for the addresses, and again, Deanna will put those email addresses in Week on the Peak. And now, the fun part. We're so glad to be together today. Can everybody wave hello to our Zoomers, be part of our wonderful community, turn off your mobile devices, and thank you for being here.
May I have this?
No.
Why don't you get something special for Grandpa?
I'm sorry. Can I return the cake, please?
Sure, yes.
I want the cake, please. I won't ask for anything else.
Next time, okay? When we can afford it?
Last time you said that.
You don't want this? I'll take it back. Hey. Hello, this is for you.
No, we cannot accept it.
Would you please?
There's no reason for you to buy the cake for us.
Well, when I was 7, my mother wanted to buy me a cake.
Mommy, I want this one.
But at the counter, we didn't have enough.
Can we get something else?
It's my birthday today. Can I choose my own cake, please?
I'm sorry.
Then, there's this man. I've never met him before.
Here, have the cake. Happy birthday.
I didn't know his name. I never got a chance to say thank you. I've never forgotten about him. The man in the queue.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
Can I have your contact number? Let me repay you when we have the money.
Promise me something, okay? Someday, when you're able to help somebody, you will do it?
May I know your name, mister?
Well, I'm the man in the queue.
I chose this cake for your birthday.
Wow, this is my favorite. Thank you.
Let's go and put some candles.
Oh, careful. you shouldn't have spent the money.
Actually, I can't even pay for it.
He give me this note.
Please write down your address. I'll bring the money back to you later.
A simple act of caring creates an endless ripple.
That comes back to you.
Thank you.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday.
Isn't that a lovely story? Yeah. We are going to have another part of this story, which is about kindness, which returns back to you. And I need some help from John and Beth. Could you pass these out? There is an envelope in these baskets that goes to everyone in the congregation. Everybody should get one envelope. There should be one for everyone. All ages, everybody gets an envelope. Don't open it quite yet. What I want you to understand about these envelopes is that every Sunday we use these baskets and we send them out empty, and you fill them with money to return to the church, and it's up to the church leaders to take that money and use it to the best of our imagination to fulfill the mission of the church. Today, we are doing what is called a reverse offering. So that means that the church leaders are putting money in the basket and sending it out to you to fulfill the mission of the church. It's an interesting idea, and at the heart of what it's trying to say is that the church does not own exclusive wisdom on how to fulfill its mission. As a matter of fact, some of the best ideas about how to do this come from the smallest among us. So open your envelopes. You will find in there something between $5 and $50. And that's partly because when we receive money from the congregation, it comes from all kinds of different households that have all different kinds of means. What to do with this money is the question. So the only caveat to receiving this money is that it needs to go towards fulfilling the mission of the church, right? The mission of the church is in your order of service. And we say it almost every Sunday, but it begins with the foundation of Mission Peak is love. So how would you express the mission of this church to somebody else? Maybe you would take your money and buy food or supplies to take down to one of the encampments and give it to the unhoused people. In there is a letter which talks about the many different ways that this has been done in the past. I have done this for about 5 or 6 times, and some of the stories are fantastic. One young girl went with her mom every Sunday to a coffee shop and painted pictures while her mom had coffee. Well, she painted pictures and she put them up on the wall and had the store owner sell them. And she sold them for 10 times the amount of money that it cost to buy her painting supplies. And then she gave the money back to the church. Or somebody from our youth group took their money to create a brochure. They got a table at the farmer's market, and they talked about how that class had helped them understand themselves and their desire to connect with other people more deeply and do it in a safe way. The result of that was that 6 new people came to church and 3 new people signed up for the OWL program that she was enrolled in. So it's completely up to you what you want to do with it. The only thing that I ask is that you send a letter to share what you did. I also want to encourage you to be creative, collaborate, come together with various people. You can pool your resources. You can do all kinds of things with each other that you couldn't necessarily do by yourself. So we're looking forward to hearing some of the stories of how you will fulfill the mission of the church and create more kindness in the world that ripples out and comes back to us. Does that make sense? Fantastic. Thanks for participating. And we have a recessional song to sing the children out to their classes. This is a song by Jennifer Pratt Walter, and it's called Wherever You Walk.
I'm thinking about all the creativity and dedication and love that we have just unleashed, and I cannot wait to see the magic we make. This is going to be fun. And speaking of magic and fun, my topic today is Canvas. And you know that that's when we pledge to pool our financial resources and support for Mission Peak. It's when we get our priorities and our budget synced up for the year. Got some good news. Some early pledges have already come in, and we have already raised a little over $84,000, which is a third of our goal. And we still need all of our pledges in order to get our $250,000 goal completed. But good start. So please, if you're here in person, do come to lunch after the service. It's going to be great. And if you're remote, attend the Zoom call tomorrow night, March 10th, 7 p.m. Either way, it'll be a good time well spent, because we'll be together. And we're going to talk turkey, and we're going to see what promises we can make to each other for our future. Now, our Canvas theme this year is Reaching for the Rainbow. And we can talk more, either at lunch or tomorrow night, about the goals that the colors in the rainbow represent. But in a nutshell, that rainbow is lovely because it's all about love. It really is. And so what I want to focus on this morning is the reaching part of the Reaching for the Rainbow theme. Okay. So you know how most weeks during our benedictions, we place one hand on our hearts, and with our other hand, we reach out to a world that needs our love? Would you all do that with me right now? Sitting or standing, whatever's more comfortable. Just hold that position and take a moment to feel it. Notice your heartbeat. Notice the warmth of your chest. Notice your seat or your feet feeling grounded on the earth. Notice the sensations of the muscles lifting your arm up and the emotions that come with that. You can put your hands down if you want now. But I hope you feel as good as I do when we do that. I feel grounded and receptive and resilient and brave. The hand on the heart, there's a comfort in that. And also a reminder that we are made of love, to love. And the reaching out, that's a very human, physical expression of both yearning and agency, hope and trust. You know, when we reach out, we're alive and willing, and we're inviting connection. And we're positioned to both give and receive, like with the reverse offering. You know, there's a confidence in this pose. Hopefully, no painful striving, just some gentle stretching. Yeah? Okay. And that's what we're asking you to do with your pledge. Reach. A recent guest speaker talked about the need to think spiritually and to act materially. Thinking spiritually is finding meaning in our highest values. Acting materially, that's doing something tangible that's aligned with those values. And that's powerful. Your pledge is a promise to act materially. And we're asking you to reach, because now is the time for all of us to stretch and expand ourselves. Our playing small doesn't serve this troubled world. If we truly want to love the hate out of the world, we're going to need to do some reaching. Please, reach into your heart and your pocket and make a generous pledge for our beloved community here at Mission Peak and the works we do. Pledge an amount that you and your family can afford, but also stretch yourself a bit. Let's reach for that rainbow together. It's going to feel so good. Thank you.
We stretch ourselves week in and week out, but one of the best ways that we do that is with our hearts. The joys and the sorrows which go to the depths of our soul get shared with one another, that we may know that sense of connection that sustains us in troubled times and celebrates with us in the good times. If you have a joy or concern that by sharing with this community might bring hope or healing, type it into the chat if you're with us online, or write it into the book back there if you're here in person. Sharing these aloud kind of creates a communion of our highs and lows. If you would like to drop a silent stone of reflection while the music plays, we invite you to do that in a minute. And of course, if anybody has personal concerns that are more appropriate for a private conversation, I would love to speak with you later or in the week, as would Reverend Barbara. In the spirit of this reading is from one of the giants of Unitarian Universalism, back when it was just Unitarianism. A minister by the name of David Bumbaugh, who was somebody I read a lot of his work. This is called Back Scratcher. The fall from grace, the great disruption of primordial order, the original sin, had nothing to do with eating apples or talking with snakes. The instrument of our fall was a wooden back scratcher. That piece of wood bent at the end so one piece could reach the unreachable spot. There between the shoulder blades, down just a little bit, now up a little, where the most persistent itch always takes residence. Before the back scratcher, before that simple infernal device, we, like our primate kin, depended on others to do for us what we could not do for ourselves. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. Before the back scratcher, before that simple infernal tool, we needed each other to scratch that unreachable itch. The wooden back scratcher dissolved the bonds of reciprocity, unloosed the ties of community, and tempted us to believe in our godlike self-sufficiency. And God walked in the cool of the garden and saw a primate standing alone. "What have you done," God asked, "that you stand alone?" "I have found a back scratcher," said the beast, "and now I need no one." "Poor beast," said God, "now you must leave this garden. In Eden, no one stands alone. Everyone depends on someone else." And thus began our wandering, our pacing up and down on this earth, scratching our own itches, pretending self-sufficiency, trying to ignore the persistent sense of loss, the vague yearning for a primordial order, a world where you scratched my back and I scratched yours. A wooden back scratcher is poor compensation for the gentle touch of a living hand. Imagine back with me to the very beginning, theologically speaking, recalling these words from John Porter. Long-planted seeds grew and thrived from star stuff to sentient beings. In a dream, Adam and Eve, innocent, tasted of the fateful fruit. They awoke and saw good and evil, felt naked, and so hid themselves. I imagine that first conversation with God was a doozy. God, who, after all, had gone all out creating this paradise where every need for every creature was met, every urge satisfied, every itch scratched. Well, look who's suddenly all grown up, God thought. God was dressing down his residence. Look who's ready to call all the shots and be accountable for the well-being of every creature in the garden. Okay, you think you're ready? Try and create the world and keep it turning. Just remember, when the balance of selfishness and generosity gets out of whack, like it does sometimes, and you notice some creature suffering, you can't just get rid of them because they're hard to look at. Again, John's words. Outside the garden, danger hid down each path, and night brought fearsome dreams. But deep in their bones, they remembered oneness and yearned for it. Just as the gates on the Garden of Eden were closing, God noticed two things in Adam's back pocket. One was a brochure for the local Unitarian Universalist church. God mused, scratching her head. How much harm could that do? And she was content to look the other way. But the other thing, that infernal tool of self-sufficiency, that has to go. And as an act of mercy, God reached through the bars of the gate at the Garden of Eden, grabbed hold of the back scratcher that was tucked into Adam's pocket. It was an act of mercy. When I imagine myself theologically walking through the garden or walking away from the garden, I feel scared. Somehow, eating that apple left me with a nagging new awareness that I had never known before of all the things that needed help. I have this urge to suddenly make a list. I need to remember all the meetings that I have to go to, the emails that I'm supposed to return, change the laundry with all my extra fig leaves. Being prepared is important, and you may think it's because I'm Unitarian, but lists and spreadsheets have become part of my religion. So when I come across the part in the Bible where it's time for Jesus to send his disciples out to share the good news of the faith, he tells them, wait for it, take nothing for the journey. And that just sounds insane to me. Nothing for the journey, no food, no computer, no internet, no money. Who would travel like that? And how would they survive being so totally unprepared? They would have to rely on the hospitality of others, however outlandish and uncomfortable that may seem. After all, what I love so much about being prepared is that it allows me to be completely self-sufficient and in control. when I am prepared, real community becomes window dressing. Nice to have, but not essential. On Tuesday night, Lucy and I went to hear one of my heroes, Father Greg Boyle. Father Greg was speaking at Paramount Theater in Oakland. Many of you have read his books or seen his TED Talks. Father Greg has for 3 decades been an inspiration to many. He grew up a few years ahead of me and a couple cities away from me in East Los Angeles. Like me, he got his Master's of Theology at the Graduate Theological Union in Berkeley. Afterwards, he went on to help found Homeboy Industries, the largest gang intervention and rehabilitation program in the world. I, on the other hand, went off to a far tougher assignment, working with Unitarians. Father Greg, or G, as the homies call him, said he scratched the itch of self-awareness when he thought he was working on his life's purpose. He said he didn't realize until it was all happening, but the poor in Cochabamba, Bolivia, turned him inside out in such a ferocious blessing of his minister that all he wanted to do ever since then was walk with the poor. He was scheduled to return and become chaplain at Santa Clara University, but when he returned home, he put in a request to serve the poor instead, and he was assigned to be priest at Dolores Mission, the parish with the highest concentration of public housing west of the Mississippi. When he arrived, Father G learned that there were 8 active gangs in his parish, 7 Latino and 1 African American, 6,000 gang members in all. He buried his first parishioner from gang violence in 1988. In the 36 years he has served that parish since then, he's done 280 more services. The first kid that he buried was an identical twin, and etched into Father Greg's brain was the image of watching the surviving brother, Vicente, stare down at his brother Danny in the casket. They, as they had done most of their life, were wearing identical clothes. It was like self-awareness standing before self-destruction, having a conversation about the future. From that point on, Dolores Mission opened itself to gang members and their lives and their needs. Dolores Mission opened their doors to the unhoused and those who had dropped out of school and those who feared so much of what was happening in their city. They stood, those leaders, they stood at the entry of the church like it was the gates on the Garden of Eden, afraid to go out into the turmoil of the city, but they also sensed that their church was not built to be a sanctuary from the world, but rather a sanctuary for the world. So the leaders let their discomfort inform their faith. They decided to turn the rectory of the church into an alternative school for gang members to get their high school diploma. The basement became a job placement center. The sanctuary became a shelter for the unhoused. And later, when movie producer Ray Stark gave a huge donation to build a bakery, Dolores Mission, the poorest parish in Los Angeles, became an employer. Before long, the garage had become a weight room, and the stoop of the church became a hangout. The parking lot became a soup kitchen. Even the worship hall, all the way from the poor box in the back to the communion table in front, became a place the unhoused found as a refuge to sleep on cold nights. These developments impressed some, but frightened others. People of the parish felt some tension. Some in the church wanted all in. They wanted to travel out to the margins to carry the good news of the mission of the church. But some felt that the margins were invading the very center of the church, and that they would soon overtake the love that they had carefully placed on the altar. So, if any of this feels eerily close to home, it's probably because it is. A few weeks ago, on February 11th, emboldened by the July Supreme Court's decision in Grants Pass, Oregon, that it is no longer considered cruel and inhuman punishment to conduct police sweeps of homeless encampments, even when the city has failed to provide any alternative places for the unhoused to go, the Fremont City Council passed a camping ban ordinance criminalizing the unhoused for essentially being poor in public. But surprisingly, more harsh was the clause within that ordinance declaring that anyone found to be aiding and abetting the unhoused would similarly be in violation of the municipal code and subject to 6 months in jail, a fine of $1,000, or both. Ironically, this came only 3 weeks after Mission Peak, along with 5 other local agencies that we'd partner with, including Tri-City Interfaith Council, Fremont for Everyone, Abode Services, Compassionate Fremont, and a group called Poverty Patch-Up, all came together to hold a special Martin Luther King Jr. Day of Service event here in Cole Hall, where we created blessing bags that contain food and clothing and clean socks and hygiene supplies that are all desperately needed by the unhoused families in the area. Had this ordinance been in effect on the day of that event, we would all be criminals, simply for allowing the central mandate to serve our community, to feed the hungry, clothe the naked, visit the sick, comfort the poor in spirit. Recognizing this as a blatant violation of the First Amendment, freedom of religion, rights, Mission Peak was asked by the Fremont chapter of the California Homeless Union to sign on, along with Pax Christi Northern California and Faith in Action East Bay, to be a plaintiff in a new lawsuit against the city of Fremont. The board considered the request, consulted with experts, deliberated, and prayed, which for Unitarians means we talked a lot. And we decided to bring the issue before the congregation. At that meeting, we talked about who we were and what we were called to do. We made sure that we understood the risks, which are not inconsequential. And together, the Mission Peak Unitarian Universalist congregation here in Fremont voted to sue the city of Fremont to seek a preventative injunction of the ordinance. But we should bear in mind that the vote of the congregation was not unanimous. And as the dozen or so purple-shirted members who attended that city council meeting on February 11th could tell you, There were many in the room that night that had a very different outlook than we had. Many of the people who supported the ordinance can look out at the more than 650 unhoused in the city, 80% of whom did not get one of the 159 shelter beds. And they think, well, they're not living by the gospel of self-sufficiency, are they? They probably even don't have a to-do list. They probably even lost their spreadsheet. And you better believe almost every one of those people who walked out of the city council meeting cheering when the ordinance was passed had a back scratcher in their back pocket. Self-reliance is carefully cultivated to be normal in our culture. But it is right in the midst of normal life that we're all from time to time upended by tragedy and reminded how lucky we are to have people, the ones who call us, the ones who remember our name, the ones who sit quietly with us until our tears run out, who show up at our door with just what we need, who bring the proverbial chicken soup for our complicated lives. In today's world, one of the declarative things that distinguishes the haves from the have-nots in this world is the possession of a back scratcher. Father Greg talks about the period when Dolores Mission began to commiserate and determine what they would do with their future. They had begun to feel the tension between those in the parish who celebrated the gospel of self-sufficiency and those who were considering the very different and more demanding gospel of beloved community. When church leaders decided that they would invite the homeless to sleep in the church at night, there came with that decision the not so subtle evidence that they had a little conflict in the church. Come Sunday morning, they would, as Father Greg says, foo-foo the place as best they could. They would sprinkle "I love my carpet" on all of the rugs and vacuum like crazy. They'd strategically place potpourri and airwick around the church to combat that lingering, pervasive reminder that nearly 50 and later up to 100 men had spent the night in the place where they conducted worship. They began to use a lot of incense on Sunday mornings before the 7:30 a.m. Mass would convene. But try as they might, the smell remained and grumbling set in. Pretty soon, people began to speak of churching elsewhere. It was about this time Father Greg described the story of a man driving by the church who asked to speak with him. The man had grown up in that very parish, and through a series of fortunate events, he found self-sufficiency. His life now included a nice car. He had a diploma on the wall. He had a good career. He had a comfortable home. And his comfortable home was now some miles from the house that he had grown up. He had an attitude that reflected all of this as well. The man knew Father Greg was the pastor, and so in the conversation, he waxed nostalgic about having grown up in the projects and pointed to the church and having reflected that he had been baptized and later made his first communion there. Then, Father Greg says, the man takes in the scene all around them. Gang members gathering by the bell tower, homeless men and women being fed in great numbers in the parking lot, folks arriving for the AA and the NA meetings and the ESL classes. It's a who's who of everybody who is nobody, said Father Greg. Gang member, drug addict, homeless, undocumented. This man sees all of this and shakes his head, determined and disgusted, as if to say, tisk, tisk. You know, the man says, this used to be a church. Suddenly, says Father Greg, I felt the urge to mount my high horse. And so I stood there and said resolutely back to him, you know, most people around here think it's finally a church. It's one of those lines that one says right before they ride off into the sunset and the credits roll. But the story wasn't over because the tension wasn't over. The smell of homelessness in the sanctuary was nearly overwhelming, undeniably part of everything that Dolores Mission was. Father Greg and the priests and the nuns who served the parish figured, well, if you can't fix it, you might as well feature it. So the priests began to address the discontent in their homilies. Homilies at Dolores Mission at the time were often dialogic. So one day, Father Greg began his homily with this question. So, tell me, what's the church smell like? People were suddenly mortified. He said, all eye contact with me stopped. Women began searching inside their purses for they knew not what. Come on now. What's the church smell like? Huele a patas. It smells like feet, said Don Raphael. He was old and didn't care what anybody thought. Excellent. But why does it smell like feet? Because many homeless men slept here last night, said a woman. Well, why do we let that happen? Es nuestro compromiso. Because it's what we've committed to do, says another. Well, why would anyone commit to do that? Porque es lo que haría Jesús. Because it's what Jesus would do. Well then, what's the church smell like now? A man stood from the center of the gathering and bellowed, Huele a nuestro compromiso. It smells like commitment. And the whole church erupted in cheering. Mission Peak just celebrated 30 years of being a community. Compared to the length of time since we left God at the gates of Eden, it's a relatively short story. But it's a story of amazing people nonetheless, and many dreams of love and great hopes for the beloved community, someday becoming a real thing. When we look back at what brought us this far, we will no doubt come across an amazing number of to-do lists, spreadsheets, action items with lines drawn through them as important tasks were completed, but relearning how to run Paradise, how to build this beloved community from scratch is more than repeatedly recycling stories of the past. especially if those stories are about self-sufficiency. So it's time now to ask the obvious question. When Jesus told the disciples to go out into the world and make the good news known, why did he tell them to make the journey empty-handed? I think it's because those hands that held back scratchers and other tools of self-sufficiency rob us of asking for help. They rob us of understanding the joy of interdependence, the precursor of radical inclusivity, the foundation of the beloved community. Remember these words from John. Now, when I despair, then surrender. Loving hands hold and comfort me. We can be those hands, holding each other with great tenderness and love. A community of cherished belonging is our dream come true. We are all inching ourselves closer to a community of kinship, says Father Greg, such that God might one day recognize it. Soon, we imagine with God a great circle of compassion. Then we imagine no one standing outside that circle, and we move ourselves to the margins so the margins themselves will be erased. We stand there with those whose dignity has been denied. We locate ourselves with the poor and the powerless and the voiceless. At the edges, we join the easily despised and the readily left out. We stand with the demonizing so that the demonizing will stop. We situate ourselves right next to the disposable so that the day will come when we stop throwing people away. This is the only Canvas sermon I have ever preached where I have come to the last paragraph and not said anything about money. That's because pledging money and pooling our resources is irrelevant if self-sufficiency is our goal. Our hands can't hold all the money that the world promises and all the hopes that we have for one another at the same time. If beloved community is what we want, we will need our hands free to reach out and hold one another in care. For that is just about the definition of beloved community. We can be those hands, holding each other with great tenderness and love. A community of cherished belonging is our dream come true, to the glory of life. Please stand and join in singing our final hymn, I Know I Can.
Please join with me in reciting these words to extinguish our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Friends, you heard Terry earlier today. Assume the pose. Remember, in your heart is the statement that we all stand upon, that you are beloved and you have love to share in this world. Your arm points to where love is needed. You become the conduit to making that happen. Everything that we do, everything that we pledge to this church is for the betterment of the city of Fremont and the people in it. May we be up to the task, and may we show that love is real, and may it be a joy. Amen.